Okay, Sensei, can you tell us a little bit more about that Kundalini practice that you're doing in your dojo?
The Kundalini practice that we have in our dojo, again, is for me, very special. My first encounter with Kundalini was through a very famous spiritual healer named John Kane, who used to operate in this area many years ago. My attitude to spiritual healing at that time was that I thought it was all fake and stupid, and I had no confidence in it whatsoever. Anyway, I visited John Kane, or somebody took me to see John Kane many years ago, and he said, "Oh, I've been waiting for you."
Really?
Yeah, but I thought that was part of his act.
In what stage was your Aikido practice in that way?
I think I was probably Sandan at that time. But he asked me to lie down, and along with a lot of other people, and my eyes were closed, so I don't know what he did. But I felt incredible. I felt so very light. I felt ecstatic. I felt a way that I've never felt before. And suddenly I just found a great change within myself, and I could not understand it. And after that first experience, I was just watching, sitting in one of the seats next to, watching things going on at the next session. And I heard a voice say, "Oh, Terry, I wonder if you could join in and help us." And then suddenly John Kane said, "Oh, Terry, I wonder if you could join in and help us." And I realized he hadn't said anything the first time, and yet I'd heard his voice, and that was a kind of supernormal phenomenon for me. And so I became one of his helpers. And John Kane was a very strong practitioner of Kundalini, and used Kundalini energy and spiritual forces in a way that it was very, very special, and I saw lots of very, very special things. I saw people do the most amazing things in altered states of consciousness that they can't normally do. Little old ladies, for instance, who have had no contact with yoga, doing the most perfect, beautiful yoga with their eyes closed, in altered states of consciousness. Other people doing lots of different things that they can't normally do.
How this bypass the physical abilities? If some old lady is not flexible.
Exactly. Well, all I can tell you is that I saw this with my own eyes, and many other things. And then I became one of his helpers, and he introduced me to the practice of, or the concept actually, of Kundalini. And Kundalini practice allows you to somehow get in touch more and more, bit by bit, with the creative forces of the cosmos, with the creative intelligence of the universe. And for me, it's very beautiful, and I just consider myself very privileged to be able to have access to this and to be able to practice this in this dojo. Not many people practice, because I suppose that they think it's a bit alternative and not real. But the people who do practice it know exactly how real it is. If you consider Sensei, he described himself as, at one point, being covered by a great golden light. Being covered by a great golden light like this is one of the higher manifestations of Kundalini practice. And this happened to Sensei. I think that some people think that his statement about being covered with a golden light was just the ramblings of an idealistic old man.
Yes.
But what if it wasn't?
The people tend to ignore this is what they don't understand, or this is what not exists between their ears.
Yes.
So that your teacher that you met, that he said that he was waiting for you. What actually he does? Is he healing the people, or?
Yes, he was a very powerful psychic healer, and many, many people survived terminal illnesses. And I remember in particular one young boy had cancer, malignant tumor in his brain, and was given a short time to live. And through constant care by this teacher, by John Kane, this boy survived. The tumor shrunk to nothing and is perfectly okay.
Can we just a little bit, so what would be the difference between Kundalini and Reiki? So basically the Kundalini is generating from your chakras up, but the Reiki you're receiving energy and spread out. This is my very basic understanding.
Well, I haven't done much Reiki, but the Kundalini healing that I've done, I have just found to be mostly very, very powerful indeed, giving the person or the patient what energy is necessary. Also, the method of administering Kundalini healing, if you're doing it through your hands, is the same or similar kind of contact that you should have in Aikido. So giving people healing, some people who are suffering from some problem, and practicing with people on the mat, I use the same contact, the same kind of energy.
So what is the mechanism of that energy, Kundalini? You generate it from your lower chakras, and
Yes.
this is just like this illustration, so it's going and extend.
Absolutely. So we start by creating sensation in the different chakras through the chakra system. And if you come to one of our sessions, most likely at some point you'll see or hear.
Well, I've been
Yeah.
in sessions.
You'll hear people screaming and shouting, and this is one of the primary effects. The people who have been suppressing emotion for a number of years, let's say even since childhood, will start to scream and shout, and this is allowing the suppressed energy out. I think that's one of the most dangerous things for us human beings, is the suppression of emotional energy.
And this is a very common thing.
Very, very common. People suppress their emotions, and they have emotions that they've had suppressed since childhood, which really need to be expressed. And so this is one of the primary effects that the Kundalini practice has. Then once you've got rid of all the suppressed emotion, then you start to feel different energies flowing through your body. You become more whole. You feel yourself expressing yourself as a human being in a more holistic way. You feel more at ease with yourself, more at ease with other people, more in harmony with the forces that sustain your life. And during a Kundalini session, people may often go into an altered state of consciousness and actually receive information that they need for their life. Or in some cases, if a person has a particular passion, could be Aikido, they'll receive information or ability that will help them in their life.
Yes, I just remember that the iron ball technique that you practice, you said that you get that information during your Kundalini practice.
Yes, that's right.
Also some other things. By the way, there is one story about Sensei that I guess most of the people ignore because it sounds like a fairy tale. I'm not sure about the details, but somebody asked him to show him martial art that he never done before for that woman with spear or something like that. And he said, okay, come tomorrow. And that night before the next day, he received that information during his spiritual practice, and the next day he showed everything about martial arts he never done before, just like to connect and download the data, and then because potentially everything already exists. We just need to able
a stage of potential.
Yes, we just need to able to connect with this thing.
That's right.
Okay, so for me it's very interesting. So you was practicing Aikido, probably this time was under the Chiba Sensei.
Yes,
probably this time.
And Connect Sensei.
Yes. In the same time you was practicing that Kundalini. In which moment you decide to join the both things? Just to obviously to separate things, but in one moment you just
Actually,
just combine them.
I think that the choice somehow was made for me. I don't think I consciously chose, but because I was practicing Kundalini, then this energy started to work through me more and more. And this is also brought on by the fact that I was wanting to change how I was practicing Aikido anyway. So fortuitously these two things came together. So I actually found myself through the practice of Kundalini changing, through giving people healing. The contact that I had with my partners was beginning to change. And I think at the time some of my colleagues thought I'd gone a bit crazy, and they used to call my Aikido airy-fairy Aikido.
Well, it's kind of probably controversial, because in one moment you said that you was practicing very tough and
Yes.
people didn't want to practice with you. But in one moment, the same guy who was very tough, in one moment he became very, very sensitive and not easy to understand for people with regular thinking. So it's kind of very confusing for the people. What's happening with this guy who he was so tough, now going the other way? And so you start to incorporate that practice in your Aikido practice, and start to, probably by this time you already met Yamaguchi Sensei.
Yes.
And all these three things you join together and start to create your style, which is very unique, and actually I never seen before. I mean, it's, for me it's unique that I never seen it somewhere else, probably because all these forces join together. And for me Aikido is art, like something that because nobody can be with somebody else. You can't be with your teacher. You can be better or worse, but you can't be the same.
Yes.
So that is your unique creature. You create that, and I believe that everyone has to create something.
Yes.
So you actually, we didn't cover this in the previous chapter, but you decide to leave the British Aikido Federation to develop your own vision or perspective.
The reason that I left the British Aikido Federation was not to do my own thing, but there were other things going on that were against my principles, let us say, and I can't say anything more than that.
Yeah,
because there in the BAF there are good people doing good things and working very hard, and I just found that there was what I saw as a conflict, something that I couldn't reconcile, and I had to leave. But I definitely didn't leave to form my own association. I didn't leave to do my own thing, but it was a matter of conscience at the time.
Yeah, well, it's kind of difficult to do something that you believe which is different of something that everybody else do. This is, I know from personal experience, and everybody knows that this is just like you need space to create something new, or something which is the best expression of your experience. Okay, so let's go back for the Kundalini. Probably people from audience, and I'm confused a little bit about the terms. So Kundalini, this is called for the Indian system, where it's mostly associated with the sexual energy.
Yes. It's transmuting base energy, that's normal physical energy, including sexual energy, transmuting this energy into higher energies. Normally this energy is on kind of drip feed, but it's possible to increase the flow of this energy, and it's possible also to make this energy flow through the higher spiritual chakras, through the higher spiritual energy centers in a human being.
Do you need to do, still so many years and I still have to ask you this, what exercise do you need to do to achieve that movement of energy? Is it only on the conscious level, or?
I think that for some people it will happen spontaneously in their lives. There's been many records of this kind of thing happening to people both in religious arenas and outside religious arenas.
Yes.
I think this is a normal, or can be a normal human experience, which is to do with the evolution of the whole human population, the whole human species. One by one, bit by bit, people become more and more awakened to the reality of their existence and to the truth of the universe. For me, I have developed a session, what's the word I'm looking for? I have developed a mechanism which is not too different from ancient practices, where you visualize light, heat and color at the different points of the chakras in your body. And then going through a system doing that, intensifying the color, the heat, and becoming emotionally involved also. And then part of the visualization is to have a flow of energy from the center of the earth. And quite simply, my commentary would be great columns of flame, great fountains of light rushing up through your body. And at this point, people find a kind of climax of spiritual force coming out through the top of the head and through their arms. And at that point, it's just so ecstatic and life-giving that, for me, it's just one of the most special things ever.
Yeah, I found once in that sessions, I start to feel like a big pressure on the top of my head, and I said, "Whoa, what's going on?" and just pull out.
Yes.
Happening.
This is part of the awakening. For some people, for the occasional person, it happens right away, but for most people, it takes practice and perseverance. But just the actual practice of this will definitely help get rid of the tension, the stress, the anxiety from your life.
And maybe we have to mention that one of the famous people who popularized this is Sri Chinmoy.
Sri Chinmoy.
Yes, who did so many incredible things, like lifting very heavy things. Mm-hmm. Like in one moment he's drawing thousands of paintings, write poetry, and so many things happen, yes, which is kind of impossible for regular people. I mean, yes. And he talking about the Kundalini. But so the ancient way, traditional way, is during the meditation you to visualize and to create sensation. This is the traditional way, but you develop this in the different way where you use the music and lighting and some other things, just to that cosmic music, just to put you in the state of the. So you develop something which will help you better to get in that state.
How can I say, when I put that music together, I somehow, I'm not technically minded at all, but somehow I knew exactly what to get from the shop for the echo chambers and the different distortion systems, sound distortion systems, and I wired it all together without knowing anything, and this was the information from the Kundalini coming through me. And a few months later I thought, I'll make another one of those, and I couldn't do it. So I was left with the first one. I just didn't know what to do. So that first time I felt there was Kundalini information coming through, and it was helping me to put that first CD together, which is a CD that I still use now.
Yeah, I told you before, it's happened with me a few times during the night. I was just sitting sometimes I just sit in contemplation, and then without any reason just start to like crying from my eyes, but with no sadness, no sorrow, and then very strong feeling of compassion, and just like everything is in the right place in the world. It's nothing controversial to anything. Everything is in the right place.
Yes, that's a kind of enlightenment that you've experienced, I think.
But I didn't do any practice. I just sitting and just poof, and then disappear.
As I've said, it can happen spontaneously.
What we can say more about the Kundalini? Is it for everyone, or?
Well, it can happen spontaneously. It is a very natural thing to happen to someone. But if you're not prepared for it, I think that you can become frightened, you can think it's some kind of psychosis. And I think that there is a possibility that in institutions, in mental institutions, there are people there that quite simply have had a Kundalini experience and it has been wrongly diagnosed, and sometimes it can be a very frightening thing. But if you know what's happening, if you're in an arena like this dojo, then everything is under control. There's always people on hand to help, and it's very wholesome, a very enlightening and a very life-giving experience.
Do you think that in order to achieve some of these states, someone needs to be on certain evolutionary level? I mean, not everyone is open for that information.
I think it's different for everybody. I think from what I've heard from the research that I've done, one of the things that has sparked off a Kundalini experience for some people is that they've had a very, very bad personal experience and maybe become close to death or close to a nervous breakdown, and this has forced the energy up. Things like this happen spontaneously. I think that practicing in an arena like this in our dojo, where we have a controlled environment, it's very, very safe, everybody's secure, everybody's happy. If someone starts to cry, then they know right away. It's a natural outpouring of the suppressed emotion. Occasionally some people will start to laugh, and again it's getting rid of suppressed emotion. But if these things happen to an individual while they're by themselves, and they start to cry uncontrollably or laugh or scream uncontrollably, and they don't know anything about it, this can be very frightening, and especially for the people who have to help them and maybe diagnose their condition.
So normally in your sessions after the Kundalini practice you give healing to the people?
There is evoked in these sessions a definite positive healing energy. Absolutely, definitely.
What type of people you helping? What problems people coming to you?
People with emotional problems, people with physical problems, people with tension problems, people who have torn muscle, stomach problems.
Sensei, it's a lot of discussions in Aikido regarding that middle part, ki, the energy. People say it's bullshit, some people say it's everything. It's a very controversial thing because obviously the people who never felt this will ignore it, or it's a wide range from the both end of discussion about these things. Mm-hmm. Can we say that the Kundalini actually refers the same thing?
I would say that there was a great connection between ki and Kundalini. After all, ki starts off as the basic life force of a human being. And also the chakra system that we use in Kundalini is very important in that. First of all, the chakra system should be used on a mechanical, physical level first. For instance, we refer to tendon very, very often, but tendon is one of the basic chakras, one of the most important chakras. If your tendon as a chakra is closed down, then very, very difficult to get a proper flow of ki, proper flow of energy. So by moving from your tendon and developing your tendon also, if possible, as a kind of center of gravity, a center of movement, a center of thought, then once your tendon is open and free, then it's very, very possible to allow the higher flows of energy. So in order to extend your consciousness, you need to be able to open your tendon and open the other chakras so that there is a flow of consciousness and Kundalini energy together. So by developing yourself through the Kundalini, you're also developing your Aikido.
Okay, but you understand that you said if the tendon is open, you can do that. How the people, it's 1,000 people, millions of people practicing Aikido, how they would know that if the tendon is open or if it's not, or you understand that would be simple response of that detailed, sophisticated explanation that you gave.
I understand this. This is a little difficult. The thing is, people talk about tendon and sometimes they locate the right place, but this is a spiritual stroke emotional center, and it's a little bit like a door that's been wallpapered over, and I'm saying open your tendon, and quite rightly people say, well, there's nothing to open.
Yeah.
And so you don't
sense.
know, this is the problem, you don't know if your tendon's open or not. Well, you do. You don't know whether your tendon is open when it's closed.
Yes.
But once it's open, you definitely know. And there's a beautiful, open, beautiful, energetic, vital feeling in your lower belly, quite simply. And you absolutely know. Once it's open, you know. But when it's closed, you can talk about it and maybe move from that point. But it really has to be open to be effective. And to allow the rest, or the full function and the full mechanism of Kundalini to work for you, quite simply. So there is a difficulty there, and yeah, I can see people's problem by even talking about this or listening to it. It sounds a kind of crazy thing. But our Sensei evidently in his philosophy talked about it a lot. So were the things that Sensei talking about just the ramblings of an old man?
Yes.
Or was it true? The thing is, if you think it's the ramblings of an old man, it might be.
No,
but
you
might also miss something if it's not.
I always think if you ignore what Sensei said and just say, oh no, this is just, then why you practicing Aikido? Just practice Jiu-Jitsu. Like the same like before when Sensei brought together all his students, said, I'm gonna tell you now the most important thing, most technique, and everybody thought it's gonna be some secret technique. And then he started talking about the harmony, this consciousness, and nothing happened after. They just wasn't ready to receive that information.
One of the most important things in the beginning is learning to take proper ukemi. If you take ukemi totally freely, in a sensible, intelligent but abandoned way, then you're allowing yourself to aspire to a higher spiritual level, a level that is more free, a level that is free from fear, free from tension. And this is a very, very important starting point for one's spiritual development through Aikido. If you don't allow yourself proper ukemi and you're always tense, always fearful, this is not a good thing. By being able to take total ukemi, maybe even if the technique isn't working too well, but still you're taking ukemi, this is a really, really good practice. If you think about it, even when you make a technique when somebody's attacked you, you're actually, or you should be, taking ukemi. You're taking ukemi from an attack and making it into a technique. So for me, there should be no difference in mentality between tori and uke, the thrower and the thrown. So you should aspire to have the same mentality whether you're being thrown or whether you're making technique.
Yeah, if you join the consciousness, there is no other way. Actually, it's the hardest thing when you hold somebody or somebody hold you. At the moment when you start, your consciousness start to go against something,
yes.
Not to connect with something. The ego stops you to connect with the energy. You can speak about the interception, the techniques, how you join the things, but if you join with idea to apply technique, you're still fighting. That's why Sensei said that Aikido is not the techniques, it's not the technique that you have to apply. This is not the something that you have to apply to win.
Quite right.
In one ideal practice should be more deep self-observation where your spirit is, and when your spirit is in the right direction, then you can express it through the technique.
So again, this is self-observation, and I mentioned earlier to see yourself from the top to the bottom. The very last thing that you want to see is your ego, or the very last thing that your ego wants you to see. Yes, but by observing your own ego, then definitely, slowly, bit by bit, you can overcome these problems. But it takes bravery, I think, somehow, because to confront your own ego can be devastatingly frightening, actually.
Also, you need to be brave enough to be weak.
That's right, exactly.
Because if I embrace attack with no resistance, I need bravery for that.
Yes.
Because the fear actually makes you to be tight.
Exactly.
And
so again, my point about observing your fear when it comes.
And this is how we actually went to the love and the harmony, because if you not accept attacker as an attacker, then you don't have that resistance that you mentioned before. You know that in the Bible where Jesus Christ said, if somebody hit you, you turn your other side. This is actually the allegory of that process.
Exactly.
Also, this is also represent this is what is in the Indian philosophy and religions, the principle of karma. Mm-hmm. So if you basically if you respond on aggression with aggression, you're staying in the same circle.
Absolutely.
You stay in the same circle of the karma, so you're repeating. The most important thing for me is that if we accept, this is no for the people who are doing spiritual practice, that the souls, they come to Earth to evolve, and there is a new consciousness is coming, and according to these new laws, they are not new, but they should be more extended now. Mm-hmm. The only martial art that can go forward is Aikido, because you need to be able to respond without harm the other side.
Absolutely.
Because if you harm the other side, you keep the same consciousness. Even if you're the best, I don't know, karate or whatever, and you said, oh, this is retaliation, he hit me, he killed me, I'm gonna hit you back. Yes, from your perspective, you have a right, but from the universe mind, you don't have a right. So you need to be able to respond without to harm the other person. And
you have a very good understanding, Michael.
And that Aikido techniques, which is absorbing the attack, is the only way to do that.
Yes.
And that's why this is that connection. First of all, removing the ego is important, and then everything else.
Yes. So you'll notice that a lot of my students, they don't have much ego. And that's because, well, a little bit. But
okay.
I mean, they're great. I love my students. But all the time, whatever they do, I'm going, no. And so the ego goes down, slowly. But at the same time, the techniques are getting better.
Yes, well, if something dies, something else is born. Oh, okay, Sensei, this is the final, our second part. Is there anything like a conclusion to say the overall in the Aikido and Kundalini? You can say a few words and
I'd
finish.
like people to listen to the voice of our Sensei and not just think about techniques. I'd like people to look towards their future and their children's future and creating a better world. And it's not something that people have to change in the future, but changing now. And the thing is that if you have the opportunity to be in harmony with someone, don't wait. Don't wait for the future. Do it now. Otherwise, it'll always be in the future, and the future never exists.
Yes.
So if you have the opportunity to use self-observation, to examine yourself, do it now. Yes. And again, a big thank you to the spirit of O Sensei and all the people who try to perpetuate that spirit. So I'm, again, along with a lot of other people, really privileged to have a life in Aikido. So thank you for all your work in this interview. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Sensei.